Welcome to this video about how to write the word equations for neutralization reactions. Before we start, we are just going to look at what happens during neutralization. During neutralization, a base and an acid react to form a salt and water. The general word equation for this looks like this. Base plus acid react to salt plus water. The arrow in the middle is just read as react to. Metal oxides are examples for bases. So copper oxide and iron oxide are both bases that we could use in neutralization reactions. To be able to write the word equations, we need to know how we find the names of the salts. So how are salts named? The first name of the salt comes from the metal in the base. For example, all salts formed from copper oxide start with the name copper. The second name of the salt comes from the acid. For example, hydrochloric acid forms chlorides, nitric acid forms nitrates, and sulfuric acid forms sulfates. So what is the name of a salt formed by a reaction between iron oxide and nitric acid? The first name comes from the base, which is iron oxide, and we only use the name of the metal, so the first part of the name would be iron. The second name comes from the acid. Nitric acid forms nitrates, so the name of this salt would be iron nitrate. What is the name of a salt formed by a reaction between copper oxide and hydrochloric acid? Have a little think, grab a piece of paper and write down what do you think would be the name of this salt. The metal in the base here is copper, so the first part of this name is copper. Then the second name again comes from the acid. Hydrochloric acid forms chlorides, so the name of this salt is copper chloride. Now we can move on to finding the word equations. I'm just going to remind you that the general word equation is base plus acid reacts to salt plus water. So if we have a reaction where lithium oxide and sulfuric acid react, we can just write those two down as lithium oxide plus sulfuric acid, draw the arrow, and now we have to find out what the name of the salt is. Again, the name of the salt starts with the metal in the base, which in this case is lithium, and the second name comes from the acid. Sulfuric acid forms sulfates, so we have the salt lithium sulfate. To finish the word equation, we just now have to add plus water, and this is the word equation for this reaction. Let's look at a second example. In a neutralization where we have copper oxide reacting with nitric acid, the name of the salt in this case is copper nitrate, and again we also have to add the water in the end. Now have a go yourself, grab a piece of paper, write down the start of this word equation. Iron oxide plus hydrochloric acid reacts to, and have a go at finishing it yourself. The name for the salt formed in this reaction is iron chloride, and we also have the water. Now we are also going to look at alkalis. Another way to write the word equation for a neutralization is alkali plus acid reacts to salt plus water. So what are alkalis? Alkalis are bases that are soluble in water. So they are bases that can dissolve in water. And metal hydroxides are examples for alkalis. So sodium hydroxide, but also calcium hydroxide, would be examples for alkalis. The word equations are very similar to the way we did them before with the bases and the metal oxides. So we have alkali plus acid reacts to salt plus water. So in the first example we have calcium hydroxide plus nitric acid reacting in a neutralization. First of all, again we have to find the name of the salt. The first part of the name of the salt here is calcium, because that is the metal in the alkali here. The second part of the name comes from the acid. Nitric acid forms nitrates, so we have calcium nitrate, and again we have to add the water to finish the word equation. Let's look at another example. Here we have sodium hydroxide plus sulfuric acid. The name for the salt here is sodium sulfate, and again we have to add the water in the end. Now for the next example, have a go at this yourself. Grab a piece of paper, pause the video and try to finish this word equation yourself. We have lithium hydroxide reacting with hydrochloric acid in a neutralization. The metal in the alkali here is lithium and the acid is hydrochloric acid, so the salt formed is lithium chloride, and again to finish this word equation we have to add the water.